Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this tutorial I am making a couple of necklaces for in my booth at DragonCon. I've started with some, around maybe like a 22 by 18 millimeter, 25 by 18. They were non-calibrated glass cabochons, somewhere within that range, and I have set them in a half Persian 3-in-1 chainmail bezel. This is woven out of stainless steel rings. They're 20 gauge 1/8 inch. There will be links to all the tools and materials, or at least as similar as I can find, down in the video description. A lot of these things I either coil and cut myself or I paint myself, and I can't, link it directly, but I can link you to at least similar materials. So I did just go through and paint this with a really pretty opalescent nail polish. I don't know how well the camera's going to do picking up on that color, but it's a very like pale blue with a nice pinky orange, like a peachy color shift with the glitters and stuff in there. Just, I don't know, I really like it. And then we also have these little Swarovski elements, these little crystal marquee beads that are drilled shoulder to shoulder. So you can see kind of like that. And I love the faceted colors and that it's about the same color scheme, or at least real similar. And then I also have some 6mm opalite beads, some little Celtic charms, some 20 gauge parawire, and some 2mm enameled iron chain. Now, this video is more to get your creativity going, and to give you some ideas, but all of the techniques and stuff here you'd be able to use in a variety of different ways. So, but I wanted to start primarily by just showing y'all how to wrap this, because I did a tutorial recently on how to wrap kind of this style of bead, but with very slight modification you can get a really interesting kind of alternative. So I've begun by doing a wrapped loop on one end of my wire, and I had about 6 inches to start with. And the way that I do the wrapped loops is, this is, the parawire that I'm using, bulk spool. I'm gonna go ahead and throw the bead on. But the way that I do a wrapped loop is I'm gonna come in about 1 inch from the end and bend a 90-degree. Use my round nose pliers, holding, I try to be consistent. I have a little mark etched into the nose of my pliers, and so I come down to about halfway to that mark, and that way I'll know that's where I'm making all my loops for this project. And so I've just got it held firmly, but not so much that I'm pinching the wire, and I'm just going to push that wire around the nose of my pliers and bring it around. We want it to look like a balloon. Like if this is the tail of the balloon, that would be the balloon, as opposed to like that. That's a little too far over. If you do that though, don't worry about it. You can just grab with your pliers like that and then just bend it down. And so keeping my pliers in there though to hold the loop shape, I'm going to take our tail here and I'm just going to press it around, twisting it around the tail of our balloon. Though most often I think of this as like the spine and that is the head, and so that would be the neck. So we're wrapping these coils around the neck. And then I've done 2 full rotations, and I'm just going to come in with my wire snips and snip just as close and tight as I can, just like that. And then, so that's how I did that one. But I'm also doing wrapped links. So to do that, we would just move the bead farther up the wire, and then I'm going to bend a 90-degree, just a few millimeters away from the bead. And I'm working off of the spool, but you could feel free to trim your wire if it gets cumbersome for you. And holding and trying to get the same spot on the nose of my pliers, and wrapping around. If you get a little spread there, just tidy it up as you go along. And then I'm going to do, there's 1 and 2 full wraps. I'm getting in there. These flush cutters do a really good job. Typically, there we go. And to clean up that little tail there. Sorry, I'm afraid that the contrast, like this video is going to look overexposed, but I'm doing my best. So thanks for bearing with me. And so if you can see, there's that little tail of wire. So I'm just going to smush that down with my bent nose pliers. And something that I actually do just to tighten everything down is I'll actually put both tips of my pliers in there. And you can see how things aren't exactly that straight. And then I'll just stretch it just a little. And you can see it lets our bead move around a little bit more than I would have liked, but it's nice and straight now. And we can put it onto the nose of our pliers and press down, and that can stretch and take up a little bit more of that space. Or if, you know, what would have been wise would have been to, before trimming off any extra tail, stretch it and then add in another loop to fill that space there. So if you've wrapped your link and you're using like a fine silver or something and you don't want to have to scrap that bit, but you don't want it wiggling around on you, you can just come in with your wire and just continue wrapping as though that had never been a thing. And my fingers just aren't wanting to cooperate, so I'm just going to use my pliers to hold as I wrap. There we are. And then I'm going to get in here and I'm going to trim that one right there. I'm going to trim this one right there. And now we can tidy it up with our bent nose pliers. And so there's always options to be able to go in and repair things. So you can see it's not perfect, but at least the bead's not wiggling. And there's no little pokey bits, so that's good. So there should be a link down in the video description to where you can find the tutorial on how to make a half Persian 3-in-1 chainmail bezel. If this can be very difficult getting the ends to join, so if you're frustrated with it or you're not interested in weaving chainmail, you can use some different pre-made bezels, anything that has little loops around it. So I'll have links for those in the materials as well. That way you would just take it and like glue the stone in. So to wrap our marquee bead, we've made our wrapped loop. And honestly, I'm probably going to rewrap that one. It came out a little wonky. But I'm going to thread this through, and you can actually measure from the ends of our little coils to where it would be exiting the bead, so about 1/4 of an inch. And so thread it in to that point, and then carefully, oh, that's a little too close still. Bring it out and then bend it up, and then from there I'm actually going to grab it with my pliers and straighten it just a little bit. I want to maintain that center line. Then, so see how we did that? And then I'm going to bring this side up and wrap around again. If the bead is the body and the loop is the head, we're wrapping around the neck. So there's 1, 2. How did we do it on this one? Okay. So then I'm just going to wrap down and around, getting a nice little spiral there, or curve rather. Then I'm going to wrap around and double up because I want to hide how you can kind of see the wire on the inside. I want to hide that, make it look a little bit more mysterious. So I'm just wrapping that around, and then I'm coming back up here to the top, and I'm actually going to thread through this hole, like that little gap there, grab with my bent nose pliers and come across. And from here, it's a motion that I do pretty frequently, but I'll put my palm up and palm down, put my two fingers together, and then twist them, alternating this. My left hand's now palm up and my right hand's now palm down. So practice that motion, because we're going to be doing that with the bead in between our fingers. So I want to get the wire to be bent kind of in line with this curve right there. So I'm going to hold fingers together and it's looping around itself a little bit. Bend like that. So there we are. I'm pretty happy with that. And so you can see each one comes out just a little bit different. On this one, I had a bit of tail and I just trimmed it and then made it into a spiral, but this one I wanted a little bit more of a loop. So now I'm going to bring that up to the top, pull that loop out just a little, and then I'm going to snip real close right there. And then use my bent nose pliers to get in and close that loop. Hello, random dog hair. There we are. And so now there is another little wrapped bead. I'm going to do that same thing again, just because part of the evolution of a person's wire wrapping, I feel like, can really benefit from duplicating projects, being like, okay, I'm going to make 4 of these necklaces, and I'm going to, have the materials out for them and do each one, and each one will come out just a little different. And I think it's a great way, like how I learned on this one, to be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't pull so hard when I'm tightening it. That information is fresh in my mind for whenever I make all of my other links. And so, I don't know, I enjoy learning that way, and I feel like I've made some of my best creative breakthroughs, like whenever I have creator's block or artist's block. That's the way that I work through it, is I'm like, I guess I'll just make like 10 of something. And it could be something like a design that I had done prior. Let me see, I think I actually have, rummaging, I had done a version of this necklace where I just had a little teardrop bead and a different color painted stone. And so that's what we're, I guess I should have started with that, but this is kind of what we're making, but I ran out of teardrops and I had a couple more cabs and I was like, okay, well, let's do this. So bringing that down, giving that nice little curve, and pinching it with my fingers, bringing it around. There's that second wrap. And then I'm going to bring it up. And this time, I'm going to do just the loop the way I had before. So you can see I've wrapped up. It's almost like if I'm wrapping around the neck, I'm treating this like it's a scarf and I've covered the face a little bit. But instead of trimming, I'm going to come in with my round nose pliers and grab as close to the tip of the pliers and as close to the tip of the wire as I can. And then using my thumb to help keep it flat and two-dimensional, the spiral that is, I'm just going to start curving around and then spiraling inward. Just like that. And I like to do kind of loose, organic tendril spirals, but you could do a very tight, mechanical looking spiral, like, like something that would be like the inner workings of a clock, where the layers of the spiral are stacked very close to each other. But I like them nice and airy and open, personal preference and all that. So yeah, there's same materials, same basic technique, 3 unique pieces. So now from there, the next step is we're going to take these little Celtic charms, these little triquetra knots, a little 3-pointed knot, and I have some rings. These are more of those 20 gauge 1/8 inch rings, and I'm going to open 6 of them. 1, 2. Whenever I open a ring, I open it like that. That way, whenever we close it, it still maintains its nice round shape. There's no brittle spot. And I only have a couple of these, otherwise I'd show you the way that I don't recommend opening rings. Here, I have one right here actually. Different sized ring, but same concept. I had opened it by pulling the ends apart. This one is actually a fake septum piercing that I had made just out of an old ring. But that same concept, because if you try to bring those ends together, this point of the ring becomes brittle, and it's really difficult, or can be for me at least, to get a perfect circle again. So we've opened up our 6 rings, and I'm going to start by just I've picked up our little knot, and you could use any charm that has holes pre-made in it. And I'm going to come in here and just pick a spot. Not real particular right now because it's not glued in, and I'm just hooking onto the border, just the back side. So if you can see, I'm coming in and just hooking right there. Then I'm going to close that ring. And so see how that's just hanging on there? So now I'm going to pick another ring, hook through, and for this size charm and this size, for this particular project, it may be different for what you're doing, but I'm going to count 1, 2 rings, and on the 3rd ring, that's where I'm going to loop through. So hooking through the charm, and then 1, 2, and 3. Sorry for it going blurry. I know it's because I've got stuff in the background, but I'm just not a tidy person, so again, bear with me. But you can see that's how we have it brought together. Wibble wobble, wibble wobble. Okay. And now I am going to do another charm on the other side. And I'm going to hook through this side of it first. Because I'm going to count 1, 2, and then on the 3rd, I'm going to hook through the border, the back edge. I used to hook through both layers, like the front and the back, but it put a lot of tension on the rings. And I'm like, these aren't, it holds up just fine like that, but it gives it a little bit more movement, which I think is nice. So hooking through the other side of our charm, I'm going to come 1 ring, 2 ring on the 3rd ring, hooking through. There we are. And so you can see it's off center, but that doesn't matter because we can just pop our stone out, turn it a bit, and get it to be centered. Oh, well, it just slid out again. So there we go, that's much nicer. And so now we get to choose the location for our dangly bit. Okay, so I think I have it pinpointed. I'm going to hook through right here. And now we can actually count from where the shoulder is joined. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rings in. So when I turn around, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rings in. And I can't remember, I know I just counted it, but I didn't know if I'd stopped on the 7th or the 8th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it's 7 empty, and then it's on the 8th one that I have the ring joined. So I'm going to pick up the ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, empty, and then on the 8th, we're going to join it. So I'm going to hook through the 8th, then I'm going to bring the charm down over that ring, grab it, and close it. And I feel like that helps me to remain symmetrical. Again, doesn't really look symmetrical though. It actually, I think, looked a little bit more symmetrical. I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to move this one over. So sometimes, oops, well, the stone just fell out. I'm just going to move it one ring out. That way there are 2 empty rings between those 2 connection points. I really hope this is making sense to you guys, because I'm mostly just like lost in my own thought process right now. Okay, so lining that up, that way the center's nice, or the bottom's nice and centered, and then pressing the stone into the bezel. And it still looks a little off center. So I'm going to try moving this shoulder down one. Like down 1 ring space. So I guess this is becoming a pretty fair troubleshooting, what to do whenever it's not working out. Yeah, so I'm just going to let the stone sit off to the side. So I've just opened it, remove it from the bezel, and then hook through the next one in line. Oops. And close it. And then 1, 2 on the 3rd space, hooking through, hooking the charm on. And this is a design that I've had on my DeviantArt for years. There will be a link to my DA account down in the video description, where y'all can see a gallery of a lot of my older designs. And if you have any requests for me to recreate any of them as I'm doing here, please leave a comment about that. Yeah, that looks much better. Maybe. So now we're nice and symmetrical. Yay! And now we can take one of our charms, and I'm actually going to use a slightly thicker ring size. So this is a 20 gauge. I'm actually going to use an 18 gauge 1/8 inch ring. Hooking through the charm, then hooking through the other charm, so the dangly bit and the other dangly bit, and closing that ring. So there we are. So already, even with just a modification in what materials we're using, we not only have a different color scheme, but just a very different effect. And I feel like whenever I'm producing inventory for in the booth, I may prefer one over the other, but it's not just about what I like, it's about what the customer or potential client likes. So from here, we could use jump rings to attach the bead link, or we could just do as I did here and just use a stainless steel ring to join the charm to the chain if you want a more simplistic look. So what I have done here is I mixed up a 2-part epoxy and filled in the back and left a little bit of a thumbprint unintentionally. And that you can see really keeps the stone in there. So I've had a lot of purists leave comments and stuff to be like, well, real chainmail doesn't need glue. And I'm like, well, it may or may not, but I'd rather be able to wear a necklace and go like this and not have it pop out than have one that's fitting very snugly pop out. So always torture test your jewelry, see if it'll hold up. When our nieces were younger, we would have let them play with some of our jewelry and stuff just to see how much stress it could go through. And so that kind of really worked out, just in helping us to realize that we needed to be hard on our jewelry to be able to test it. And so I really liked that epoxy, and I use, links will be down below, but it's Devcon 2-part 5-minute 2-part epoxy, and I'll just mix it up on some like a piece of paper and put it on with like a toothpick, like settle it in there. I've covered that in some different tutorials, but I'm gonna weave up these other ones and then you know, well, put all the bits and pieces together and then finish it off. But the way that I finish my chain is I use, again, you can see I've just attached with a jump ring a lobster claw clasp. There are links for this down below, and you can see I actually transitioned from the more delicate 2mm chain to a bulkier 4mm chain. And this is what I use as I call extender in the back, and that way the necklaces that I make and sell and wear myself can adjust anywhere from about, 18 inches to around 24 inches. And then I always bring extra extender chain with me if somebody decides that, like, I love this, but I want it as a 30-inch necklace. And then I'll make modifications just there in the booth for them. But I hope that this video was helpful to you guys, like a little even would be good. But if you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave those down below. I am going to go ahead and rewrap this length. I'm not happy with it being longer on one side and shorter on the other. That's driving me a little crazy. So to do that, good thing pair of wires affordable. So I can mess up and not feel like I just lost, $5 to $10 worth of wire on one little piece that I had to scrap. But links to all my social media are down in the video description below if you want to tag me in any of your work so I can see what you're up to. There's also a link to my Patreon if you enjoy my free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, as well as participate in my monthly craft crates or my behind the scenes content or my digital download content. I try to post a daily over there, and the more you pledge, the more you get. And you guys just do so much for us. Like, I really try to give you a lot of value over there on Patreon, even if you're not a pledger. I post stuff that can be viewed just by those who have a Patreon account and are following, but just don't have room in the budget for pledging, which I totally get that. I've had folks apologize and be like, "I'm so sorry I can't pledge." And I'm like, "No, buy beads. Go, like, invest in yourself. Like, just that you're here hanging out with me is such a blessing." So thank you guys for that. But I'm gonna keep on crafting, and until next time, happy crafting, y'all. Bye.